Good afternoon and welcome to the Joy Show, or good morning and great evening. Depends where you are in this wonderful world of ours. I'm Barbara Schreiner Trudell and I am your host. And Joy for me is an acronym meaning just one you. And today we celebrate pride and we celebrate all beautiful things about love and beauty and being authentically who we are. But let's begin with the land acknowledgement. We work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We include the Métis, Inuit, and all Indigenous people. We're also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these land, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination toward our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. And by making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Well, today I have two remarkable guests. But first, Melissa. Melissa is a creative, a person who cares deeply about the inner journey, brave spaces, and of course, doing the work. And her soul comes alive when creating and connecting with others. Spiritual direction, companionship, embodied arts and exploration, creating ceremony, speaking and writing are all the ways she expresses herself in the world. The common thread that connects her services is the heart. She's one of a kind. Well, and I'm in awe of her parenting style. She's a remarkable parent. She's a queer woman who is raising a remarkable transgender teen, and she brings out love wherever she goes. And I am so delighted to have Melissa, but also Charlie with us on the call today. Hello,
Hi.
welcome.
Hey, thank you. We're happy to be here.
Oh, so glad that you're here. Tell us a little bit about um, transgender. Like, I know there's some people probably who come on the call who are not quite clear what that means. Maybe you can give us a little bit more information.
Yeah, I think transgender is just an umbrella, and there's so many more things to transgender than we think of it.
Mhm. So, what
Yeah,
does it
so
mean?
I,
Oh, go
I would
ahead.
stretch
Yeah.
I would stretch I would stretch that a little bit to talk about this idea of binary.
Yeah.
So many of us were raised that there's binary, meaning boy or girl, for example,
Yes.
and yet already we know that that is not fulsome, in that there's approximately 1% of the population who's born intersex, which
Yeah.
means that they're biologically having anatomy that has been um, coined or described as male or female. So we
Hmm.
already know that there's that additional experience in biological sex assignment.
Yes.
And so that's a piece of or an example. When you're talking about the land acknowledgement, that's an example of how quickly we just erase an experience, or we say that thing that's naturally here is somehow not natural.
Yeah.
So the first piece with transgender would be to understand the word cisgender. And cisgender is where you're born as a baby, the doctor looks at you and says, you are a girl, and you grow up and you are taught by society what a girl is and how a girl behaves, and you grow up and you confirm, hey, basically I identify with that experience. And that
Yes.
would be that would be cisgender. And it's
Hmm.
really important from my perspective to have a word called cisgender, because
Yeah.
then the experience of transgender, which, like Charlie awesomely explained, is an umbrella for many experiences that are not that.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
so what that can look like in part is transgender. Hey, I was assigned a gender at birth, and
Hmm.
my heart and my mind do not identify with that gender. But I identify potentially with the opposite of that. And really, male and female are not opposite, they're boxes. I identify with the opposite box. Great, that's an experience.
Yeah.
Then for someone like myself, I would say that I notice my masculinity and
Mhm.
femininity are both loud. So I feel loud masculine, loud feminine, and I identify loudly with both. What would you say your experience of your gender is? Because it's slightly different.
Yeah, like I would say I feel mostly both all the time. And like if I had to choose which gender I had to be, I wouldn't do it. Like I couldn't because I don't feel that way. I feel both. Um
I
Yeah,
think all of us are, right?
well, and also
Mm.
also also valid and natural is to say, hey, you've given me these names and genders. I identify with neither.
Yeah.
Also valid, also part of that non-binary experience of I don't really fit into these categories or these social constructs of what I was told to do or how I was told to be, and neither of those. The most important piece about somebody who says to me, "Hey, I'm looking to understand," or how do I approach if somebody says to me, "Here's my gender experience," I would say to them, "Believe them and respect it."
I
Believe
love
them and
that.
respect it. Oh, for
Yeah,
me, I experienced my gender this way. For oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
exactly.
And that the other piece that we could touch on a little bit is just this idea of pronouns and sharing pronouns.
Mhm.
That the most the most encouraging piece for that is simply when people share their pronouns
Mhm.
in an email tagline on a show like this where the pronouns are there and shown, and that
Mhm.
that does not give you a right to somebody else's pronouns, but it does give space for somebody to go, hey, that person's aware that there's more pronouns, or that we can communicate. Sorry, we've got a
That's
dog
okay.
and a kid coming home. But there's more than one experience, and there's more than um, one way of having gender expressed. And so that piece of I oftentimes get asked, how to approach that, and I say, well, like, first of all, educate yourself.
Yeah.
Secondly, share first. Share first.
Yeah,
My name
that's
is
really
Mel, and my pronouns are she and they.
yeah.
And I'll invite you now to introduce yourself in a way you feel comfortable with. And maybe they'll share their pronouns and maybe they won't. It doesn't really matter. You've created the space.
And I think that's the biggest part of this is honoring every person and realizing that gender is I mean, it's such a fabricated thing. It goes back to the boxes of, that I think were set up in the beginning with colonialism altogether, that there's this whole system in place that here's the box. Nobody really fits in it, but we're going to force everybody to try and conform to it, which is going to allow the, powers to be to sort of uh, well, overpower the rest of us, keep us in a place of fear, sense of I'm not enough or somehow I'm different. I hear all the time from people going, well, I'm just so different from everybody else. No, you're not.
Mhm.
You're just like the rest of us going, I don't fit in the box. And that I think is a really important part of the whole story. So, Charlie, tell me, do you want to share a little bit about your kind of coming to terms with who you are and how you identify?
well, it started I actually became gender fluid like last summer.
Okay.
And I like felt a way that I decided to just push back. I didn't really want to think about it because at the time I was transgender as a girl.
Hmm.
And then I went to this LGBTQ camp,
Yeah.
and I got to like meet more people like me,
Okay.
and it was really amazing. And then I finally like let that feeling that I've been having come through, and I realized that I wasn't just a girl, I was both. And
Awesome. And how did that feel?
that felt amazing to like come to terms with myself.
Yeah, good for you. And being able to do it at a young age is so powerful. I look at myself and go, man, it's taken me 66 years to try to figure myself out. So good on you. And, that goes back to your mom who has created the space for you to be who you are. Because I gather mom took it fine.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Now, what about your experience at school or whatever? Have there been any challenges for you? What's that been like?
Yeah, there have been some challenges with people not respecting my pronouns and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but I just, stay away from those people and I lean into more of the people who accept me,
Perfect.
and that helps a lot with school.
And what about teachers and stuff? They're good?
Oh yeah, all of my teachers mostly are supportive and use my pronouns.
Awesome. Awesome. I think, the world is starting to change and people are starting to understand that there's 8 billion people on the planet and all of us are unique and special. And to put us all in one box that we have to be this or that, I think is just so um, painful. And it's causing a lot of harm for a lot of people. And that's kind of sad. It sort of explains why our world looks like it's broken. I don't think it's broken. I just think it's hidden. And, if we start talking about these things, it makes a big difference overall.
Yeah, I think there's a key piece to Charlie's story that is so important, and it's that Brene Brown about 4 months ago came out with a video, an amazing video, and it talks about basically Brene Brown, who is an incredible leader in research studying on empathy and vulnerability and all of these things, comes out and
Yeah.
says about empathy, I was wrong. And she continues to say this. She says, I would describe I underestimated how important language is, having language to describe an experience.
Yeah.
And she says, I liken it to the ocean being emotion and the shore being language. And I underestimated how how much lack of language there is because of the exact setup of our world. Our systems were designed to exclude. Here's your three options for things you can be: heterosexual, only attracted to the opposite gender, and we're telling you there's only two, even though we know that many more exist. Cisgender, we're gonna tell you your gender, and we're gonna tell you how to be your gender,
Yeah.
and hopefully that works for you. And then monogamy, right? Marriage was only created approximately 200 years ago, and part of the motivations for that historically were, 200 years ago, that women were able to own land. And to be clear, that was white women. It has been less time for women of color. So part of the motivation toward marriage was knowing who your heirs were, the acquisition of land, and the acquisition of a woman,
Yeah.
right? So that does not mean marriage can't be this beautiful, wonderful thing, but historically that was also tied to it, this sense of ownership. So if we don't know any other ways, we simply do what we know. And
Yeah.
so for me, what's key with Charlie's story is the ability to have language to go with their experience. And Brene Brown says, basically, most people, when you ask them what emotions there are, it's maybe sad, mad, angry, something like that, or happy,
Yes.
sad, angry. And yet think about the myriad of multitude of emotions that exist.
Mhm.
But if we don't have language to express that,
No.
then we may struggle to express that, or we may have an experience, but we can't find a way to communicate that with the world. And so that camp, from my perspective, armed Charlie with this understanding of language, and started to name those experiences. But I also noticed when you asked the question about, how did your mom respond? What I think is more interesting was how distressed Charlie was to share that information. And it had
Oh,
nothing to do
absolutely.
with fear of me. It had to do with understanding our bigger world and how that works, and just what that meant to, quote, not pass, was what they said. Well, I'm not just going to look like a girl anymore. I am going to look like the both that I am. And
Yeah.
that's not widely accepted yet.
No, it's not. And I'm glad to see that we're having conversations like this so that we can deepen understanding so that people who don't know can begin to figure it all out. I know some people are having difficulty with, non-gender bathrooms. Every now and again, I'll hear somebody go, where am I supposed to go? Well, it's a bathroom. If it was in your house, everybody would share it. So what's the big deal? So I think there's a lot of learning that needs to happen. And the more conversations like this that we have, the better that's going to be. I'm learning. I'm just glad I have a teenager because they know everything. Do you remember when you were a teenager, Mel, and knew it all?
I do. I do. Yeah.
To go back to those days. But the truth is, you do know a lot, Charlie, and you know a lot more than we do. And you really are a teacher for both your mom and for me and for anybody who's listening, because we have not walked in your shoes. And so sharing your story is really important because people need to know that who I am is sufficient to life. I don't need to be anything else, and I don't need to people please. Do you feel comfortable just sort of, sometimes being on the outside because people aren't sure how to connect?
Yeah. Like I think um that like some people can be super rude and stuff, but like other people can be super kind and loving, and those are the people you should lean into more and
I
lean
agree.
out of the rude, mean people that don't accept you for who you are.
I think they don't accept you for who you are because they haven't accepted themselves for who they are. I really think those hurts come from that self-hatred. If I don't like me, I can't possibly like somebody else. And we've been living in a world that's all about competition. And I think that's one of the things, it's one of the things I really despise about the school system is, standardized tests, for example, telling kids that, you gotta study hard, you gotta get this perfect, and all the stress that gets put on children, I think, well, on all of us for that matter, but we've put a bunch of things in our kids' heads, not you, not me lately, probably with my first children I did, but not with the latest one. Get smarter as you get older. But getting to that place where we disagree with the school. Like I've gone to the school a few times and had conversations because what they're suggesting is really creating a bunch of soldiers, I guess, people who conform to the norm rather than stand out. And I think standing out is what we should be doing. So what are you passionate about, Charlie? What do you love to do? What really excites and delights you?
That question is so awesome, except for the school conversation you had before. Um, I think I'm thinking, Charlie, about track and field, and I'm just thinking about sharing that story in a moment.
Yeah,
But the ways for which you know, just being able to walk in your own shoes, or having room to walk in your own shoes, and having room to have conversations and room to be heard, can almost effortlessly make changes.
yes.
And oftentimes we think, it needs to, um, I don't know, take a long time or be really loud or something else. But Charlie's track and field experience this year is nothing short of incredible. So go to it, Charlie. Share that
Yeah,
share that
please.
story. It's
Okay.
it's amazing.
So what happened is for track and field you have to choose boy or girl,
Mm.
and I didn't want to do that. So there was this form that we had to fill out so that we could actually go and track and field. And I wasn't filling out that form, so my gym teacher.
Pause for a minute though too. And Charlie did come home and share with us, "Hey, I'm stressed. I'm anxious. I'm being asked to pick a team. I don't fit either of these boxes." And both their dad and I said, you kind of get to pick and choose in life what hills you want to die on, what energy you want to put in. And
Yeah.
so we just gave support and permission to not have to put energy into this one. You just don't have to do it. You
Yeah.
don't have to go. You don't have to do it. This is track and field. But what I did notice in those moments was that there was a sadness on Charlie's face because they do like participating and they do want to be a part of it. And that I underestimated, like I said at the beginning, the power of staying communicative and in dialogue where there is a level of openness. So the person may not understand, but they are aiming to understand. There's value to staying in dialogue. And so Charlie was doing some good dodging of the teacher for a multitude of weeks, and respect to Charlie for that, because like you said, you saw them every day at school. Yeah.
Yeah, I had gym almost every day at school.
Okay.
Yeah. So respect on dodging that well, but then continue.
But then my teacher pulled me aside one day and asked, like, do you want to do track and field? Like, is there a reason you don't want to? And I just said, like, I don't want to pick a gender to do it with. And so my teacher created the open category for me. And then a few weeks later, I found out that another kid joined the open category.
Awesome. That's how change happens. Be you.
Incredibly so. That by the end of the day,
Yeah.
hey, I kind of view myself in the middle. So you asking me to choose, like I can't, because I'm not either of those things. But the suggestion, to create open space resulted in coming back by the end of the day to say, yeah, we've created a new category called open. And then by the day of the track and field meet, Charlie was not competing alone. Though I do think it was interesting because I asked Charlie particularly, just with sensitivity to their feelings of, hey, I'm just curious about how you feel about potentially competing alone. And it was interesting to hear your response. Do you remember it or no?
No, I don't really, but
Yeah, I think that Charlie's highly social and would rather connect with others. But what you said was, like, obviously, I'd rather um, compete with others, but I'm glad to at least have a spot. And so noticing that spot piece was important, right? So that idea of walking in your own shoes is, the challenge is, can one learn how to walk in their own shoes in a way that they actually give room for another to walk in their shoes. And for me, that was a moment where the teacher, can't make anyone else do anything, but they can create room. And then in creating that room, it served immediately another youth.
Which is so powerful. And that's what I love about um, the youth of today, because I'm seeing similar things with my daughter, who has been a fierce advocate for so many things in her school. But the way that it's done is not aggressive anger, it's clear, concise arguments that really can't be dispelled. And the principal said to me at one point, like, I've never had kids like this in 15 years of school. I've never had kids who just say, this is what's right, and here's what you need to do about it, and not creating a fight about it, but standing firm. And that's what you did, Charlie. You stood for what you believed in. And that not only has created space for you and this one other youth, but what it's done is opened up for years to come for everybody. Like, wouldn't it be nice to see just an open category, period? Like, let's get rid of this, boys wear blue and girls wear pink, and girls dance and boys play sports and all the rest of this garbage, because none of that's really true. It's all, we all do all sorts of things. And I think, changing the storyline is so powerful. And it happens when powerful young beings like you stand up and go, this doesn't work for me, but yes, I want to participate. Good for you. Good for you. I'm going to say it's time for a commercial break. I have a puppy that wants to let out of my room. So let's go to a quick commercial. You're watching The Joy Show. I've got Mel and Charlie with me today, and we're talking about pride and all the reasons why being just one you is so perfect. Anyway, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience? Or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at.
And we're back. This is a Joy Show, and we have Mel and Charlie with us today, and we're talking about all things fluid. Let's stop talking about boys and girls and him and her, and let's just talk about human beings having a life that fits, whatever that looks like. I like that idea. Do you have an idea of what you want to do with your life later on? Have you got a plan for the future? What kind of work you think you want, or?
No, I don't have a plan for the future, but like I don't really even know what kind of job I want to do, but
Yeah.
I would love to do something with like art or like drawing, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Awesome. Awesome. And you know what? It only took me to age 42 to start doing what I love. So you got lots of time. I figure many people do a number of different things throughout their lives before they get to, I don't know, the place they want to be. And some people get there right quick. They just know. What about you, Mel? How has your journey been to sort of finding your true authentic self and your purpose?
Yeah, so for me, I think in terms of how I want to be, and a little less. I noticed that generally speaking, the work that I do
Mhm.
focuses on teaching the difference between fitting in and belonging, and understanding
Yeah.
that fitting in is oftentimes requires of us to mute aspects of ourselves, to put masks on, to quote pretend with others in order
Yes.
to be able to be a part of something. And belonging is where you can show up as you are and have room within a space. And so, whether that's work within restorative justice, work within conflict coaching, spiritual direction, embodied facilitation workshops, uh, being a part of the pride community, speaking, advocating, whatever that is, really at the heart of it, at the heartbeat of it, is being somebody who models what it looks like to be a space creator for others, which means
Yeah.
learning how to meet. I've said in the past, meet my own shit and magnificence, my flawed and divine dancing together and being
Mhm.
all of that at the same time. And that I find that that naturally creates other like space for other people to show up as they are, and that that in and of itself is the healing place. It's so potent to be able to
Yeah.
be who you are is life-changing to be witnessed as who you are and
Yeah.
to be who you are and held and responded to with love and kindness and respect. And what that looks like to yeah, you could just feel the difference, the texture difference of spaces of belonging. And so I'll dedicate my life to that in whatever forms that takes, which
Yeah.
sometimes Charlie and I were talking just before this podcast about reflecting on our day tomorrow. We'll be
Yeah.
at Tri-Pride celebrations in the afternoon and doing a craft tent, and we've made together
Oh, I
into
love
they're
that.
called zines, and probably my favorite. This is a Charlie drawing, so that's Charlie's art,
Wow,
and
Charlie, you're talented.
story is a story that I wrote for them, and they illustrated, and it's called a zine, which is a little self-published piece. And so part of our booth will give out free versions of this and invite people to actually open it up and put personal messages of support for the people that they love in their
Oh,
lives. And so we'll be doing that in the afternoon. And in the morning, we'll be going to support a story time with a drag queen that's being
yeah.
protested. And Charlie and I talked about it. And again, you know, it's do we have the capacity for this? And it's okay if we don't. It's okay to say no. And if we do, how do we want to show up? And so for Charlie, that looks like going in and listening to the story and just being thrilled to experience that. And for me, it looks like standing outside and making sure that people can safely get in yeah, to listen to the story. And the little poem that I wrote for Charlie that's in this book,
Yeah.
I'll read.
Please.
Your toes are rainbows naturally. What a wonderful gift this be. Others may try with polish and paint to paint bright colors or brush over yours faint. But my darling, why not dazzle instead with your rainbow toes and your rainbow head, your rainbow heart and your rainbow soul, already perfect, already whole.
Oh, that's beautiful, Mel. I love that. I love that. Well, if you have any extra of those, I'd be happy to hand them out around here as well. Like, that's brilliant. Maybe I can buy some from you and pass them on. I think, finding ways of communicating the beauty of life and love and creating space. So I love that you're doing that. And you've obviously done that with your children to create space for them. I didn't do so well with my grown children. I have a 50-year-old, a 42, and a 40, and I have an 18. So it's like there's this big spread. But I learned a lot in parenting the first three, and I think I've done a much better job with the last one. One of the things, and I don't know, Mel, if you ran into any challenges with the school around, how Charlie identifies, or if there was any issues. Um, I found that as a parent, it's so important to stand up for your children and to be that voice with them, not for them, but with them when they stand up for themselves, and to not buy into the stories that teachers and principals will sometimes tell. Um, have you run into any issues, or have you been able to stand well with your kids to be that ally, really?
Yeah, I've noticed that with Charlie, they've taught me a lot about what it looks like to stand with
Mhm.
and to continue to tap into checking in with Charlie about their needs. What are your needs? And it's meant that I've had to do a tremendous amount of work that is mine to do about my own feelings and emotions so that I don't hijack Charlie's experience with my emotions,
Right.
but rather give room and space for them to navigate and see that they can navigate what they are doing
Mhm.
and with support. And so for me, I actually, if we just look at the track and field
Mhm.
experience, I know that I could not have navigated that as well as Charlie did. I know that I couldn't have.
No, I couldn't have
And
either.
so it's been a little bit, like, frequently we talk about like, "Hey, this is something where I can come in, but you can like, would you like that support?" Or, just different sort of dealing with the realities of being a teenager and navigating that world. And, I can come with you to this place. I can, what would you find supportive? What are your needs? And I found that that's the key piece in keeping the power with the person who's having the experience versus, I think we think advocating can be, about being a voice for, and so being a voice with has actually meant for me what feels like taking a back seat,
Very
but
much.
that it's not static. It switches all the time. I'm here with you. I'm standing with you. I will hold you for hours when you're sad.
Yeah.
And how do you want to handle this? And that, to be frank with you, their judgment's just been better than mine. I'm Rolodexing through my head some of the experiences they've navigated, and their wisdom is intact. So I wonder, actually, if part of the empowerment piece is reinstilling that place of trusting yourself. What do you need? And not aloneness with, but
With,
not for.
very important.
And seeing how Charlie has just come into a place of being, for myself, I was sharing before the show, I only came out 3 years ago, and I'm 1,000% sure that watching my child on the front lines was part of the reason why I got the courage to not have them stand there alone. But it's been an incredibly challenging experience, and an incredibly beautiful experience. Like Charlie said, it's like learning how to let people in so that you can also let love in. And that when we're like, for me, I describe in my writing that growing up, it was as though I was always living my life 12 feet away from who I really was. Like I was watching my avatar do life like I was supposed to, be
Yes.
who I was supposed to. And that at sort of the peak of looking like I had it all together externally would have been the peak of self-abandon. And somewhere in there for me, my personal journey was that I got to uh-oh, that I got to that dark point um, of if I can't be me in this world, then I'd rather not be here. And I'm definitely not going to have my child on the front lines alone. And Charlie and I have talked about that whole what it feels like to not be able to be yourself. But when I reflect on my growing up experience, I grew up before there was social media and cell phones. My grade 9 computer class still had typewriters. And when I reflect on that experience, I'd have been coming out to be alone. Of course, there was many of us who had queer sexual orientations, gender identities, ways of being in the world, but we didn't have language. We definitely didn't have space. And the narrative of wrong, bad, sin was so loud that to have come out, I give myself just such gentle generosity. Of course, I wasn't going to come out. And for who? And for what? To stand there alone? But if we don't create space, right? So that's part of allyship, is creating space so you don't have to push for it. And part of this experience is learning how to stand up to say, actually, no, I'm here and I exist. And all those things that were natural, like I think about at the beginning when you did the land acknowledgement. And when you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, so we came and we said, these ways of being, right? I want to acknowledge first, I am not Indigenous. And so if any Indigenous person says to you, what Mel said about two-spirited people is wrong, or it means this for me, please honor that Indigenous experience and voice. So I share my understanding of that, but please honor whatever Indigenous voice speaks more fully and wholly to this. But the idea of two-spirited, and part of the reason why it's being moved to the beginning of the acronym as we start to acknowledge that, is because we as settlers came in to a place where this two-spirited experience of diversity in gender identity, in spirituality, in sexual orientation was understood to be sacred and vital and important. And part of the reason why Non-Indigenous folks would not use the word two-spirited to describe themselves, is because we haven't the understanding. So that language piece is key. So I both name that and know that my understanding is so limited
Yeah.
to what true understanding from an Indigenous lens would be. But I would suggest that because we erased some of that language and some of those ways of being, we lost some of this richness that was natural. It was always there. It was
Mhm.
always there. And it was natural until we said, no, this can't exist.
Yeah.
And you just need to pretend. We would rather you pretend, you know. And one of the things I would say that I've been learning in some of the advocacy work that I do, particularly in schools, is that folks seem to be more offended by the idea that there's choice and change. And I would suggest that when one's worldview is given to them, this is who you will be, this is how you will be, this is what you will do to be safe, okay, and good, then you don't have room for who you are, and you will spend this journey not knowing who you are, or being afraid to be who you are because who you are doesn't fit this narrow exclusion. Our systems are designed to be exclusionary, right? So they
Yeah.
exclude, and then you have to figure out what meaning or matter you're giving to that in your life. And so that's part of the reason why it's perfectly okay to question at any point in your life anything. And it's also perfectly okay for someone to say, yeah, I don't want to share these aspects of my identities in this
Absolutely.
space,
Yeah.
or I will share it in this way on this day. But that the experience, yeah, it's incredibly layered and challenging, but the gift of being who I am in the world, and the gift of having someone like Charlie who just defies all of those limited thinking spaces, is that they teach me how to be myself in a world where really, I think one of the things I said to them, though I hadn't fully embodied it, and then they decided to take what I said and embody it more fully, is that no matter who you are, someone's not going to like you. So at least in this world, you can be yourself. And we had a conversation, and they said, yeah, like you told me that. And I was like, ooh, I got to start taking my own advice here, because you are embodying that to a higher degree. But it's amazing what happens when we give one another room to be who we really are, and how much love and beauty there is in that diversity.
Yeah. It's what makes life interesting. You know, if everybody was just me, well, that would be a pretty boring world to live in. It's seeing the differences. I've learned a while ago about these. What is it called? The human library, I think is what it's called. And it's where two people will sit and one person will share their story and the other one will listen. I mean, wow, just to have somebody listen to you,
Mhm.
really listen, not be formulating a response or creating a whole different narrative in their mind, but taking in what you're sharing. Like, how beautiful would that be for everyone to be able to go, this is who I am, or this is what my journey has been, and to have that honored would be just remarkable. So when I see parents like you that have created that space for your children where they get to be who they are, we don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, this is one of the things I keep telling my daughter when, she gets into a place of going, I just don't know, is like, nobody knows who you are. So anybody who throws a judgment, a criticism, whatever at you, they're not actually speaking to you. They're speaking from themselves, and they don't know you. And so they couldn't possibly be factually addressing you in that way. And so it's up to you to just not take it and allow them to keep it for themselves, right? And I think just creating space for people to be able to take what feels right for them and to leave the rest. And like you said, Charlie, to be with the people that sort of enrich your experience in your life and create opportunities for you. And then those that are hateful or destructive, it's like, well, thank you for sharing, and have a nice day. I think that is a really powerful thing as well, to love our enemies, And what I mean by that is to accept that they must be in incredible pain. And so I'm just going to honor your existence and keep you keep you at arm's length.
I think they call that loving from the balcony, right? Well, hope you work through that. I'm going to go over here because I don't need to work through that with you.
Exactly.
I don't need to educate you. I don't need to listen to your hurt toward me. No, just no, thank you for that. I was thinking though, if there was one thing as a parent that I would want to say, particularly because I work as a part of a program called Back Talk, which is oftentimes with unsheltered queer youth. And I hear 15 to 29, and I hear story upon story of being unsheltered due to rejection from parents for gender identity and sexual orientation. And this is what I would really, really share from my heart to anyone who questions how they want to navigate this. First of all, there's that understanding of love as a mindset and a value to show up with love. And we experience a massive amount of coercive and in Buddhism, the near enemy, the thing that looks like, acts like, and may feel like connection is actually control.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we say, I will love you if you do, be, act, look like I want, doing what I want. And what I would want parents to know is that if that's how you are conditionally loving your child, you are creating the perfect conditions for which they will still experience all they're experiencing. They will still be exactly who they are. You just will not know them at all.
That's right.
And if it is you who would not want to know your child if they don't show up as you wanted them to, as you think they ought to, then that's your work. That has nothing to do with the person before you. But that is how transactional, shallow, and meaningless our existence are, because like you said, we are so afraid to touch into ourselves that we fear if we cannot touch into ourselves, how are we ever expecting to be present to the experience of another in an expansive way? And so we forfeit all that's real for our narrative of what is right. And it all is there in existence. We just experience none of it. And we experience that level of disconnection. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
And then we have that sensation of loneliness and isolation in our lives, and we never quite feel connected. And it is that piece of our own doing. We are creating that ourselves. We are co-creators in our lives. And so for me, what I speak to is that part in our brain that says, I value love and I value kindness and I value respect. Then you got to show up in it. You have to hold yourself accountable to how you show up each day and what that looks like.
And it's such an individual journey. We look at life and we're on a planet with 8 billion people, but there is 8 billion different expressions. And to sort of come to understand that every one of them is valuable. It's like a beautiful tapestry. If you go into a museum and you see an incredible tapestry, if one thread was missing, it would look incomplete. And so all of the ways that we are, everyone, like we're all bringing something to the table. And if we could accept that we have that value, like what a different world we would live in.
Well, yeah, because we co-op each other. We co-op our kids. We say, I'm going to have a child and they will be, versus, hello, nice to meet you. And how can I support you in being who you are? I'm going to have a partner and they will be who I want them to be. And if they're not, that's a reflection on me. And that's who I am, versus being and calling ourselves into a healthy relationship with ourselves and love for ourselves, for which we don't need to take everyone else's journey and make it about us. What do you think, Charlie? What do you wish people knew? What do you want people to know? What's on your heart?
That most queer people get a lot of judgment, but you shouldn't let that get to you because, like I've said before, there will always be people that will love you.
Yeah.
And like if you have like this one person's getting you down, you probably want to talk to someone
Yes.
that will understand and help you cope with that.
And I'm curious, Charlie, if you didn't have space to be who you are in this world, if you weren't given that space, say within your family, what do you think would happen for you?
I would probably lose myself.
What does that mean for you?
Like I wouldn't be able to be myself. I would just, not be happy at all.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there who are experiencing that.
Yeah.
That non-acceptance, who you are, the way you are is wrong and bad. Yeah. That's the narrative we need to change. I think as parents, we have to learn how to love. You need a license to drive a car, you need a license to do certain jobs, but you don't need anything to be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And man, some of the mistakes we make, ooh, baby. I sat down with my older children and apologized for a whole lot of stuff. And that's my healing journey to go, wow, I projected my pain or whatever. I had my first child when I was 16 years old. So it's like, her and I just spent the last couple of weeks together and it was so great because we're talking about things that, things that have caused a bit of a disconnect or whatever, and it's just being able to speak frankly about, wow, I could have done this different, or you could have done that different, or I did a horrible thing when she was 16. Her 16th birthday, she was born on St. Patrick's Day, so I thought I was doing a nice thing. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I sent her a clown with green balloons to her school. Bad idea. She's 50 and still reminding me of it. And I'm like, oh dear. So Mel, don't do that.
And we're not gonna get it all right. The thing
No,
is when we risk relationship, there will be harm because
yeah,
we may have an intention and show up, but it's when we intentionally seek
yeah,
to limit one another's ability to be who they are in this world. And so one of the one of the conversations is about statistics and mental health. And that I've heard one of the counter narratives be folks who are able to transition, for example, still deal with mental health and depression years later, and it's still difficult for them. And I would say, well, of course it is, because they're still living in a world for which people are not capable of walking in their own shoes in a way that they can be okay with diversity around them. And so for me, growing our capacity to be in spaces that are diverse and not lose ourselves in it, but
yeah,
rather to coexist with one another in a healthy way is the practice. Because like I would say for myself, yeah, my mental health suffered trying to pretend to be something I wasn't in the world to be safe and okay. But if I were safe and okay and had language and understood how natural all these ways of being in the world are, well, then I would have a completely different experience. And so it's like you said, to co-create a world where there's the reality that you can actually be who you really are and be seen and supported as who you really are. We're thirsty for those spaces, all of us, in the many ways that takes form. So
yeah.
growing our capacity to be with ourselves and all of the many selves and identities that exist within us, sometimes in tension, then grows our ability to be with one another in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is if we're finding it difficult to be with others, we need to really do some inner work, because that discomfort comes from that that place, those things we're hiding, the things that maybe we were told were bad and wrong when we were little, all the ways we were told no, uh, you can't do that, or don't do this, or this isn't right. All of the labels that were put on us too, that, girls are this and boys are that. And just all of these stories that have created many generations of people who are struggling to find a way to fit in the world. And that's what's causing all the disparity, is we don't know how to fit, because we haven't figured out we need to just be who we are. And that's enough in and
And
of itself.
it's amazing to me, because I think about, there's a narrative that because it works for me, it should work for you. So we should
Yeah,
just all be the same. And then the opposite is, if I don't have room to be who I am, then you shouldn't have room to be who you are.
you are.
And it's like, or we could both make room and be who we are, right? Like there's
Yeah,
other choices. It's not as fixed or limited as
yeah,
that.
it's not
You
this or
can,
that. It's
yes,
and.
and that we don't have to experience everything to value room for one another. We don't have to understand everything to say, no, at my core, I want to see each person thrive and be loved and be accepted and be a part of this world.
Yeah, changing our language. You had talked about language earlier, and I think that's such a crucial part of all of this, is our language is so limited. It
Mhm.
has been created to create more of the competition and conforming and trying to fit in, and there isn't really an expression of language that allows us to just be more fluid in life and to realize we're here to experience being, and it's not about doing or anything else. It's just about showing up, and what does this day mean to me, and how can I be in it as fully as possible? And the only way I can do that is if I have some level of self-understanding and self-love and care. Then I have the capacity to bring that to the people around me as well. And that's the journey we're on, is to stop fearing each other so much.
Well, and to really, really check ourselves. If I'm caring so much about what somebody else is doing, what about myself am I avoiding? What is
Exactly.
it within myself I don't want to see or experience
Absolutely.
that I'm going to try to dictate to another who and how they should love,
Yeah.
what they should look like, what they should wear, how they should be in the world, how they should do relationships, how we should do this, all in that way where we are impressing that on another,
Yeah.
and
Control freaks.
doing that masterfully to avoid having to look at ourselves, take responsibility and accountability for how we're showing up. How are my values showing up?
Yeah.
Am I showing up in what I say I genuinely believe in? Am I
Yeah.
doing my own work? Yes.
And that's the thing, is doing our own work. Like when we get triggered, which we will, then in that moment, instead of looking at whatever's in front of us, that we're blaming for the trigger, but to go inside and go, wow, what am I feeling? What have I touched here? What part of me is ready to heal? I think when we've been triggered, there's something that's ready to be revealed and healed, and we can expand ourselves. So this has been wonderful. I am so grateful to both of you. Charlie, you're a rock star. You're going to do great things in the world, and your art is beautiful. I think you
Thank you.
already are an artist. So, that'll probably
Absolutely.
form some part of what you do in life. And Mel, Parenting 101, you've got it. It's so important, creating safe space. So thank you both for being here. Thank you, everyone who is watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And do comment if you have ideas, fears, doubt, worry, whatever about your life. Reach out. We're here to continue conversations that allow for opening. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you next time.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute
at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.